Shalom and welcome back to Che Languages. It's been over 6 months since the last installment of Forgotten Slavic Languages, so I think it's about time I make this part 3. I've learnt some more about some marginalised and really truly forgotten dialects, languages and literary micro-languages that all deserve to come to light. Yalla matchilim. So the first language we're going to talk about is not so forgotten, but it is extinct and not many people know a lot about it. This language is Polabian, and I should note it has no official flag. This is one of many I found online that didn't look ethno-nationalistic. The Polabians lived in this area of what is nowadays Eastern Germany before the Germanic migrations. The name Polabia itself comes from Laba, which was the Polabian name for the Elbe River in modern-day Germany. The Polabians themselves use the name Sluvenstaret when referring to their language, with the classic Slava root meaning word, or possibly Slava meaning glory, both in Proto-Slavic. As I mentioned, it is now extinct but possibly being revived, more about that in a minute. It belonged to the Lechitic group of West Slavic languages, meaning it was particularly closely related to the modern Sorbian languages as well as Czech, Polish and Silesian. Similar to Lower Sorbian, Polabian would accept many Germanic loanwords into their language over time. Although the pronunciation isn't entirely clear, it is believed that Polabian's phonology looks something like this with a particularly interesting set of vowels. Polabian actually left an influence on the place names of Eastern Germany. A number of names of cities and rivers come from the language, including Berlin, which meant swampland, Elbe, as mentioned before, Kraków am See, a city in Germany not to be confused with Kraków in Poland, Wustrow and Luchow, and some more. The last native speaker sadly died in 1756, but there was a second language speaker who lived until 1825. Thankfully, quite a few texts survive which let us know what the language sounded like. From these texts, there is supposedly a revival movement going on. However, I could only find a small amount of sources for this, these sources being Reddit and Discord, so I take that with a pinch of salt. There are many flaws in this revival movement, not only the fact that the few surviving texts have little vocabulary in them, only about 2,000 words or so, but also the lack of any ethnic Polabian nation today, meaning no one is truly Polabian, thus there is no real reason and or motivation for a revival movement. It seems to be confined to a Discord server, fully online. As I mentioned before, we do have Polabian texts, and here is the Christian Our Father prayer. As you may notice straight away, the Germanic influence is seen on the first line, and a number of Germanic words persist through the text. The Eset also gives it a Germanic-inspired orthography. It reminds me of Vimisodes, the Germanic language I spoke about in Poland. Polabian is like the reverse answer to Vimisodes, a Germanic-influenced Slavic language in Germany. Well, that's all we have for Polabian, so let us move on to the next part of the video. The next language on this list is Chakavian, spoken along the Dalmatian coast in Croatia. By the way, that's not the flag of Ukraine, that's Dalmatia, but it's almost identical. We've actually seen the flag before on this channel when I talked about the Dalmatian language, but I'm using it here as a regional flag as Chakavian is not related to Dalmatian. It's referred to as Chakavsky and has 80,000 speakers. To anyone who's commenting right now about how Chakavsky is a dialect, well, think again, because it was officially recognized as a language in 2020. There is a link to the article in the top corner now. The name Chakavian comes from the word cha, which means what, whereas standard Croatian belongs to the Chakavian dialects with sto meaning what. There are also the Chakavian dialects with kai meaning what. This is the traditional way that linguists have classified the different Southern Slavic dialects. Chakavian has many of its own dialects. A map of just Istria alone demonstrates this. And here is the broad phonology of Chakavian dialects. The problem is, it was only recently classified as a language and thus there is still no official standardization. Chakavian is often not written, and I could not find any texts, but I did find what is apparently a well-known Chakavian phrase, cha-shi. None of the words here are found in standard Croatian, cha meaning what, once again, and shi coming from Italian, meaning yes. The phrase is used something like no way or really in English when responding to surprising information. That's all for Chakavian now, and we will move on to our last language of the day. Finally, we have a language, or a literary micro-language, that I had not heard of until very recently. When talking about forgotten languages, this one definitely embodies that title. The language in question is Podlachian, with this awesome flag, and spoken in the Podlachia region in eastern Poland. It is referred to as Podlaska mowa in Polish, and apparently the speakers also use this themselves. It is described as an East Slavic literary microlanguage, which is a term coined by the Slavic linguist Alexander Dulichenko in the late 1970s. The term microlanguage is only used for Slavic languages, but I personally think that it should be more popularized elsewhere, as it fits the category of not quite a language but definitely more than a dialect that I run into quite a lot in these videos, especially in my forgotten Hellenic languages videos, which are more like lesser known Hellenic microlanguages, as only 2 of them in the series were languages of their own. Podlachian fits into this category because it's actually a product of the Ruthenian dialect continuum, being somewhere between Belarusian and Ukrainian with a heavy Polish influence, making it really hard to classify. Ukrainian and Belarusian linguists alike both try to claim Podlachian as a dialect of their own language and not the other, but the truth is a lot more complicated than that, as it often is in linguistics. Here is the phonology of Podlachian, and it's interesting because it appears to share features of all 3 of its influences: Belarusian, Ukrainian and Polish. The script is modelled off both Romanized Belarusian orthography and Polish orthography, looking something like this. Note that some of these letters, such as Q, are just used orthographically in proper names, such as in Polish. Finally, we have a rather large sample text of Podlachian here, with a translation into English below. If you speak Ukrainian, Polish or Belarusian, or really any Slavic language at all, let me know your opinion in the comments. For now, however, we're going to conclude the video here. I thank you all for watching and for waiting patiently for part 3. I hope you all learned something new about these languages, or micro-languages for that matter, and if you did, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it if you would stick around for more of my videos, so please consider subscribing and enabling notifications so you can see my next video when it comes out. That's all for today. I once again thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Yalla, lehitrot.